There's a hidden side to empathy that no one talks about, the part where compassion stops feeling like love and starts feeling like a cage. Most people think being an empath is a gift, a higher form of kindness. But for those who live it, it can become a quiet kind of suffering. The constant absorbing, the endless giving, the unspoken belief that to be good means to carry everyone else's pain. It begins as sensitivity, as understanding, as love. But over time, it becomes something heavier. The empath starts to disappear beneath the weight of their own compassion. This story is about that disappearance and the awakening that follows. It's about what happens when empathy goes unbalanced, when helping becomes harming, and when being good means abandoning yourself. Through the lens of Carl Jung's shadow work, this journey explores how suppressed anger, hidden truth, and unacknowledged needs shape the empath's downfall and their rebirth. Because at the heart of every overgiver lies a wound, the belief that love must cost you your peace. This is the path of unlearning, that lie of stepping out of the cage and discovering that true compassion doesn't mean losing yourself. It means finally coming home to you. It starts quietly, not with a flash of light or some mystical sign, but with a feeling, a strange ache that doesn't belong to you, at least. You don't think it does. You're sitting in a room full of people, maybe friends, maybe family, and everyone seems fine. They're laughing, talking, existing like they always do. But you feel something different, a heaviness behind the laughter, a sadness in the air that no one's acknowledging. It lands in your chest like a stone dropped into still water, and the ripples start to spread. You don't know it yet, but this is the beginning, the first pulse of the empath's story. From the outside, you look normal. You smile when others smile. You say you're fine when they do. But inside, it's chaos. You feel everything, the pain behind someone's eyes, the frustration in someone's voice, the quiet loneliness in someone's silence. It's like standing in the middle of a storm that no one else can see. And the strangest part? You start to think it's all yours. Every emotion that enters the room, you claim as your own. At first, it feels like a superpower. You can sense what others can't. You know when someone's lying, when someone's hurting, when someone's pretending. You can walk into a space and feel the entire mood before anyone says a word. People call you sensitive, and you wear it like a badge of honor. But soon, that word starts to feel heavier too. Because sensitivity, when the world doesn't understand it, starts to feel like weakness. The gift that once made you special starts to hurt. You start changing to make others feel better. When someone's angry, you soften your tone. When someone's sad, you smile wider. You absorb their pain so they don't have to. You take responsibility for emotions that were never yours to carry. It's not something you plan, it just happens. You think love means feeling everything for everyone. You think kindness means being the sponge for everyone else's rain. But you don't see the quiet cost building inside you. You start to disappear, piece by piece, without even realizing it. Because the more you feel for others, the less room there is to feel yourself. Your emotions get tangled with theirs, like threads in a knot too tight to undo. You can't tell where you end and they begin. The ache that once whispered becomes a constant hum, a low vibration under everything you do. People tell you that being empathetic is a gift, and maybe it is, but no one warns you that every gift has its shadow, that sometimes the thing that makes you kind can also make you small. That sometimes The heart that feels the most for others is the one that forgets how to feel for itself. And so it begins the story of the empath, the one who feels everything, everywhere, all the time. The one whose compassion burns bright enough to light the world even if it starts to burn them too. There comes a point when the feelings stop making sense. You wake up heavy, but nothing's wrong. You feel anxious, but your life is calm. You cry at things that don't belong to you. It's confusing, like walking through fog that carries every sound from every direction. You can't tell where one emotion ends and another begins. It's not just empathy anymore. It's noise, constant, invisible noise. At first, you think you're just sensitive, maybe emotional. You try to fix it by doing what everyone else does. You sleep more, distract yourself, pretend you're fine. But it doesn't go away. You walk into a room and feel the tension before anyone speaks. Someone smiles at you, but their sadness slides under your skin like cold air through a crack in the door. You leave school or work feeling drained, even if nothing had happened. It's like you've been listening to music all day at full volume, and now your mind can't find the silence again. The hardest part is not knowing it's happening. You think these emotions are yours. You think you're moody, unstable, overreacting. No one teaches you how to recognize when your feelings belong to someone else. No one tells you that empathy, when it's unguarded, can become possession. You don't just sense pain, you collect it. Every interaction leaves a fingerprint on your nervous system. Every smile hides a frequency that your body accidentally tunes into. It starts to feel like drowning in invisible water. You can't see the source, but you can feel the weight. Sometimes you wake up already tired because your mind has been processing everyone else's storms while you sleep. You try to shake it off, but the emotions cling to you like static electricity, too small to notice, too strong to escape. You begin to crave quiet, not just the kind without sound, but the kind without energy. No conversations, no messages, no rooms filled with moods that aren't yours, just stillness. You start to realize that solitude isn't loneliness, it's medicine. Because for a moment, the flood stops. You begin to hear something faint beneath the static, your own heartbeat, your own emotions, the voice you forgot you had. Carl Jung once said that most people don't see their own emotions clearly. They project them outward. But for the empath, it works the other way. They absorb what others throw away. You carry what they refuse to feel. And the more unaware they are, the more weight you take on. So you start to wonder, how much of what I feel is actually mine? The anger that hits you when you talk to someone, is it yours? The sadness that follows you home, is it theirs? You start to ask those questions softly, like a prayer, like a way to find your edges again. And little by little, you begin to understand. Empathy without boundaries isn't connection. It's confusion. You're not meant to hold every feeling that passes through you. You're meant to witness them and let them go. You don't remember deciding to do it. It just happened. Long before you had words for what empathy was, you were already carrying it. You learned to read the room before you could read a book. You could tell when the air in your house was about to shift, when a voice would rise, when silence would stretch too long, when a smile meant safety or danger. You learned to listen, not to words, but to energy. Every sigh, every pause, every flicker of someone's tone became a signal you couldn't ignore. It wasn't a choice. It was survival. You were the peacekeeper, even when you were too young to know what that meant. When someone was angry, you softened your voice. When someone was sad, you made yourself smaller so they wouldn't have to carry another burden. When tension filled the room, you filled it back with light. You thought love meant fixing. You thought safety meant silence. You thought being good meant disappearing. You became the emotional barometer for everyone around you, measuring, predicting, absorbing. If someone was upset, you felt it in your stomach. If someone was anxious, you couldn't sit still. You didn't just understand people's moods, you became them. And because it made others more comfortable, you kept doing it. You smiled when you wanted to cry. You helped when you needed help. You apologized when you weren't wrong. Adults called you mature for your age. They said you were kind, thoughtful, old-souled. But beneath the praise, something fragile began to form. Every time you made things better for someone else, a small piece of you went missing. You learned that love wasn't about being seen, it was about seeing them. You learned to tune yourself out so you could stay tuned to others. And slowly, the lines between their pain and your peace blurred until there was no border left. Years later, you'd look back and realize how early it began, this habit of absorbing what wasn't yours. It became a reflex. The moment someone's energy shifted, your body reacted before your mind understood. You didn't know how to stop because you believed that keeping everyone calm was what made you worthy. You thought harmony was something you had to hold up with your bare hands. But there's a cost to carrying everything. The body remembers what the mind can't release. You start to feel heavy for reasons you can't explain. You mistake exhaustion for empathy, guilt for compassion, self-erasure for kindness. You can't tell where your feelings end because you've never been taught that you're allowed to have boundaries. So you grow up thinking that love means carrying everyone else's pain without letting them see yours. You think that being good means never being angry. You think that being needed is the same as being loved, but it's not. And one day, when you're finally still enough, you'll feel it, all the weight you've been holding since you were small, all the pain you mistook for peace. And for the first time, you'll wonder what it might feel like to finally put it down. It's easy to mistake empathy for love. In fact, for most of your life, you thought they were the same thing. You thought love meant understanding someone so deeply that you could feel their pain as if it were your own. You thought being close meant carrying their sadness, fixing their problems, softening every hard edge so they could breathe easier. You thought this was connection, this giving, this merging, this constant reaching out, with open hands and no armor. But what you didn't see was that little by little, your empathy was turning into a quiet kind of self-erasure. You didn't fall in love. You dissolved into it. You began to shapeshift without even noticing. Around some people, you became light and quiet, careful not to disturb their moods. Around others, you became their mirror, reflecting back what they needed to see. You learned how to shrink your truth when it made others uncomfortable. You stopped speaking up when honesty caused tension. You told yourself it was kindness, that real love meant putting others first, even if it meant losing yourself in the process. And for a while, it worked. People adored you for it. They said you were understanding, selfless, easy to be around. They leaned on you, trusted you, needed you. Their happiness became your purpose, and you wore it like proof that you were good. You didn't notice that the more they leaned, the less you could stand. The problem is that empathy without boundaries doesn't feel like love. It feels like drowning. You start to carry everyone's emotions until you can't find your own. You smile through exhaustion. You say yes when your heart screams no. You confuse peacekeeping with peace. The lie is beautiful because it looks like goodness. It sounds like love, but it's not love. It's survival. It's a learned response from years of believing your worth depends on how useful you are to others. Real love doesn't demand that you disappear. It doesn't ask you to bleed quietly while calling it devotion. It doesn't take your voice and label your silence as strength. But when you're an empath, you don't know that yet. You mistake your capacity for feeling as proof that you care enough, that you're doing what's right. You don't realize that loving without balance slowly empties you. One day, you wake up and feel a strange emptiness. Not sadness, just absence. You've been so busy being what everyone needed that you've forgotten what you feel like when no one else is around. You look at yourself in the mirror and realize you've become a collection of everyone's emotions but your own. This is the beautiful lie that empathy and love are the same thing. They're not. Love is shared. Empathy, when unguarded, is surrendered. And when you give too much of yourself away in the name of care, you eventually realize that what you've been calling love was actually a slow, quiet form of disappearing. You start to notice it after a while how different you are around different people. It's not intentional. You don't wake up and decide to become someone else. It just happens. You shift like water, taking the shape of whoever you're with. Around one person, you're soft and quiet. Around another, you're funny, bright, full of energy. Around someone else, you're calm and wise, the one they come to for comfort. You wear every version convincingly. And yet, when you're finally alone, you can't quite remember which one is really you. That's the curse of the mirror. You learned early that being yourself wasn't always safe, that it was easier to become what others wanted. So you started reflecting instead of being. If someone was sad, you became gentle light. If they were angry, you became calm water. If they were lost, you became direction. Every emotion that entered the room was something you adjusted to. You became fluent in the language of everyone else's needs, but forgot your own native tongue. People loved you for it. They said things like, "I feel so calm around you," or "You always understand me." They didn't realize what it cost you to be that understanding. Because every time you reflected their world back to them, a little more of your own world disappeared. You became a mirror, polished and perfect, showing everyone what they wanted to see. But mirrors don't get seen, only looked into. You start to sense it when people leave. They walk away comforted, lighter, clearer. You, on the other hand, feel heavy, like you've handed out pieces of yourself you'll never get back. You start to wonder why you're the one who ends up drained after every conversation. Why people feel close to you, but you feel invisible next to them. The truth is, mirrors don't have boundaries. They just reflect. They don't say no. They don't hold their own shape. They exist to make others feel seen. But when you live like that, you stop existing as a person with edges, wants, or depth. You become a surface that catches light, but produces none of your own. And yet, part of you stays addicted to it. That feeling of being needed, that validation of being the calm in someone else's chaos. Because if you're the mirror, you'll never be blamed. You'll always be liked. You'll always be safe. But safety built on self-erasure isn't peace. It's quiet destruction. There comes a day when someone asks you what you want, and you freeze, not because you don't want anything, but because you don't know. You've spent so long reflecting everyone else's desires that your own feel like strangers. You look into the mirror and realize it's empty not because no one's standing there, but because you've spent years disappearing into everyone else's reflection. And maybe that's when it hits you. You were never meant to be a mirror. You were meant to be a window, something people can see through without losing sight of who you are. It starts so innocently. You just want to help. You just want to make things easier, smoother, lighter for everyone else. You tell yourself that's what good people do. They care, they give, they show up. You learn to say yes even when you're tired. You learn to smile even when you're hurting. You learn that your comfort matters less than someone else's peace. And for a while, it works. People call you kind. They call you thoughtful. They say the world needs more people like you. You smile at that. But somewhere deep inside, something starts to ache. Because what no one tells you about being the kind one is how quickly kindness can become a cage. At first, it's made of small moments. Someone needs you, and you show up. Someone crosses a line, and you let it slide. Someone asks for too much, and you convince yourself they must really need it. Every time you silence your no, the bars grow a little thicker, and before long, you realize you've built a prison out of your own goodness. You wear compassion like a mask, soft eyes, gentle tone, understanding words, but behind it, you're exhausted. The constant giving starts to feel like bleeding. You start apologizing for things that aren't your fault, taking on blame to keep the peace. You tell yourself it's noble, that love is sacrifice. But the truth is, you've been mistaking fear for virtue. Fear of disappointing someone, fear of being seen as selfish, fear of losing the approval that makes you feel safe. So you keep playing the role. You become the listener, the healer, the calm one. People come to you with their chaos, and you absorb it quietly, smiling as you drown. You tell yourself you're strong enough to handle it, that this is your purpose. But late at night, when no one's watching, the truth starts whispering. You realize that your empathy has turned into obligation, your care into currency, your love into labor. You've fallen into the compassion trap. And the hardest part is how right it feels. Helping people gives you a rush, a temporary glow of meaning. But afterward, you're empty. It's a cycle. You pour, you drain, you pour again. You tell yourself, this is what love looks like. But deep down, a quiet rebellion begins to stir. The part of you that's tired of giving without receiving. The part that longs for rest but feels guilty asking for it. The part that knows that love shouldn't hurt this much. Saying no feels like betrayal. Setting a boundary feels cruel. You've been trained to believe that goodness means endless giving. But real compassion doesn't demand self-destruction. Real love includes yourself. The trap doesn't close all at once. It's slow, silent, built from all the times you put someone else first, because you thought that's what love required. But one day, you'll realize that compassion isn't about caring everyone. It's about caring wisely. It's about giving without losing yourself in the process. And when that day comes, you'll take off the mask, not to stop being kind, but to finally be kind to yourself. There's a moment every empath reaches, the quiet, heavy realization that not everyone wants to be saved. You spend so much of your life trying to help, trying to heal, trying to lift others out of their darkness. You think that if you just love hard enough, listen deeply enough, or stay patient long enough, they'll change. But then you start to see it, that some people don't want to be healed. Some just want to be held in their chaos. And every time you reach into their storm to pull them out, you lose another piece of yourself to the wind. It doesn't happen all at once. At first, it feels noble. You're the one people come to when things fall apart. The one who listens, who understands, who stays even when it's hard. You pride yourself on being loyal, compassionate, dependable. You tell yourself that if you can ease their pain, it's worth it. You don't notice how your body tenses before every call, how your mood mirrors theirs, how your energy fades after every conversation. You think you're helping. You think that's love. But slowly, it starts to hurt. You begin to notice the imbalance, how you're always the listener, never the one listened to, how your empathy becomes their escape, but your exhaustion becomes your secret. You watch them fall into the same patterns, make the same choices, repeat the same pain. You offer advice, comfort, presence, and they take it all, but nothing changes. That's when you realize you're not helping anymore. You're enabling. You're keeping them comfortable in their suffering. You've mistaken compassion for rescue. Saving people becomes your identity, and that's the trap. Because if you're not the savior, who are you? You've built your worth on being needed. You've mistaken your exhaustion for purpose. You don't see that every time you step into someone else's pain, you stop them from learning to walk through it themselves. You take away the lesson that pain is meant to teach. And in doing so, you both stay stuck them in their struggle, you and your sacrifice. There's a cruel irony in it. You help because you care. But the more you care, the more you bleed. You start to feel resentment creep in, that quiet, shameful anger that whispers, "Why does no one do this for me?" You hate that thought. It feels selfish, unkind, but it's not. It's the truth. You're running on empty and calling it empathy. You're saving everyone but yourself. One day, you'll stop in the middle of helping someone and feel it, that hollow ache in your chest, the one that says, "This isn't healing anymore." You'll realize that sometimes helping is harm. That love without limits becomes self-loss. That empathy without balance becomes poison. And when that truth finally lands, you'll start to do something radical. You'll stop saving people who won't swim. You'll start letting them find their own strength, even if it means watching them struggle. You'll start choosing your peace over their chaos. And for the first time, you won't feel guilty about it. You'll just feel free. At first, it's just tiredness. You tell yourself you need more sleep, more vitamins, more time off. You call it stress, burnout, maybe bad luck. But deep down, you know it's something else. The exhaustion doesn't come from work or late nights. It comes from carrying emotions that were never yours. Every yes you said when you meant no. Every smile you forced through discomfort. Every time you swallowed your truth instead of speaking it. It all had to go somewhere. And when the heart stays silent too long, the body starts to speak. It begins quietly. A heaviness in your chest after hard conversations. A tightness in your stomach that doesn't go away. Your shoulders ache as if you're holding invisible weight. You tell yourself it's nothing, just tension, just life. But your body remembers every unspoken moment. Every time you wanted to walk away but stayed. Every time you comforted someone who hurt you. Every time you betrayed yourself for the sake of harmony. The body keeps score. It doesn't lie, even when you do. When you pretend everything's fine, your nervous system knows better. When you suppress your feelings, your muscles tighten. When you ignore your limits, your immune system weakens. You think you're holding yourself together, but what you're really doing is holding everything in. The emotions you refuse to release find new ways to exist through fatigue, headaches, anxiety, stomach pain. The body becomes the voice of your unheard boundaries. Empaths are experts at listening to others, but terrible at listening to themselves. You can read everyone else's emotions, but you ignore your own signals. You convince yourself that love means endurance, that if you just try harder, stay softer, you'll finally feel peace. But peace doesn't come from pleasing. It comes from honesty, and your body knows that. There's a moment, maybe it comes after years of pushing. Maybe it comes after one particularly heavy day when you realize you can't keep going like this. You wake up feeling heavy, even after sleeping. You cry for no reason. You feel like you've aged overnight. The body isn't punishing you. It's begging you to listen. It's saying, please stop pretending you're fine. So you start small. You rest even when you haven't earned it. You say no even when it feels uncomfortable. You cry without apologizing. You stop holding your breath around people who drain you. And slowly, your body begins to trust you again. The tension loosens. The headaches fade. The fatigue lightens. Because finally, you're not asking it to carry what your words refuse to. The body doesn't need you to be perfect. It just needs you to be honest. Every time you honor your truth instead of swallowing it, every time you rest instead of running, every time you choose yourself without guilt, your body sighs in relief. It's been trying to protect you all along. And when you finally start to listen, you realize the aches were never random. They were messages. The pain wasn't the problem, it was the language. There's something about your light that people feel before you even speak. It's calm, warm, safe. The kind of presence that makes others exhale. You can walk into a room and people just start telling you things. Their stories, their secrets, their pain. It's like your energy says, I'll hold this for you. And without realizing it, you do. You hold it all. The broken, the lost, the lonely, the ones who just need someone to listen, and the ones who see your kindness as an opportunity. Because light doesn't just attract the wounded, it attracts the manipulative too. At first, you don't notice the difference. Both kinds of people come to you looking the same: tired eyes, soft voices, heavy hearts. You want to help. You always do. So you listen. You comfort. You give. You offer understanding to those who have never been understood. You see goodness in everyone, even when it hides behind sharpness or cruelty. You see potential where others see warning signs. But not everyone who comes to your light wants to heal. Some just want to feed. They don't ask directly. They take quietly. A compliment here, a favor there. Emotional support that never ends. They drain you slowly, calling it love, calling it friendship. You mistake their need for intimacy. You confuse their intensity for connection. And before you realize what's happening, your empathy has become their energy source. It always starts the same with admiration. They tell you how different you are, how no one else understands them the way you do. It feels good to be seen like that. But soon, the admiration becomes expectation. They want your time, your attention, your energy. They want you to keep reflecting their best parts back to them, even when it hurts you. And because you care, you do. You think if you just love them harder, they'll soften. If you just stay patient, they'll heal. But they don't. They just take more. You begin to notice how you feel smaller around them, how your words carry less weight, how your needs somehow become burdens. They rewrite reality so subtly that you start to question yourself. Maybe you are too sensitive. Maybe you are overreacting. Maybe you should give them another chance. You start to believe that being loving means being endlessly forgiving. But love without limits isn't compassion, it's control, disguised as care. The narcissist doesn't love your light. They love what it gives them: validation, stability, admiration. And because you're wired to give, you don't see the extraction. You only see the connection. You think you're healing them, but they're only learning how much you'll tolerate. It takes time to see it, to understand that not everyone who's drawn to your empathy deserves it, that not every broken person wants to heal. Some just want a place to rest their shadow while they avoid their own work. And when you finally step away, you'll feel it, the quiet return of energy you didn't know you'd lost. The fog lifts, the air clears, and you'll realize that protecting your light was never selfish. It was sacred. It always starts with something small: a raised voice, a slammed door, a look that means something's wrong, but no one says what. As a child, you learn quickly that peace is fragile, that safety isn't about locks on doors, but about moods in the air. You learn to sense when tension is coming before it arrives. You watch faces, listen for tone, feel the temperature of a room like a weather vane for emotion. And when the storm builds, you try to stop it the only way you know how: by being good, by being kind, by making everyone else happy. It works, at least for a while. When you make them smile, they calm down. When you stay quiet, they don't get angry. When you fix things, they don't fall apart. You start to believe that love is earned through harmony, that safety is found in self-erasure. You think, if I can just keep everyone okay, then I'll be okay too. That's the seed of the sacred wound, the belief that your worth depends on the comfort of others. You don't see it as a wound, of course. You see it as love. You become the helper, the peacekeeper, the one everyone can depend on. You learn how to sense sadness before it's spoken, how to adjust your energy to soothe others. Adults praise you for being mature, compassionate, selfless. But beneath that praise, something hollow starts to grow. Because every time you put someone else's feelings above your own, the message sinks deeper. I matter only when I make others happy. That's how the empath is born, not from abundance, but from adaptation. You mistake emotional survival for emotional intelligence. You think your sensitivity is a gift, but it's also a shield, a way to anticipate pain before it reaches you. Every time you take responsibility for someone else's peace, you reinforce the belief that your safety lies in control. You don't mean to control anyone. You just want everyone calm, because calm means safe. But that need for harmony becomes your invisible chain. As you grow older, the pattern follows you. In friendships, relationships, work, you become the stabilizer, the healer, the one who absorbs the chaos. You say yes when you want to say no. You carry guilt for things that aren't your fault. You apologize for simply existing in a way that might upset someone. You love deeply, but your love comes with an ache. The fear that if someone's unhappy, you've done something wrong. But the truth is, that belief was never love. It was defense, a child's way of surviving in a world that felt unpredictable. And now, as an adult, the same instinct that once kept you safe is the very thing keeping you stuck. The wound has turned sacred not because it's holy, but because healing it requires reverence. It asks you to go back, to hold that younger self gently, to tell them the truth. It was never your job to keep everyone happy. You were always allowed to be safe, even when others weren't. There comes a moment when the sweetness starts to taste bitter, when all the smiling, nodding, and endless understanding begins to feel like poison, dripping slowly into your own veins. You've spent so long being kind, so long swallowing your feelings, so long softening your voice, that you've forgotten what it feels like to have an edge. But deep down, something is stirring, something sharp, hot, and alive. The thing you've spent years suppressing has finally decided to surface. It's anger, not the violent kind, not the kind that destroys, the kind that tells the truth. You've been taught that anger is dangerous, that good people don't get mad, that to be loved, you must stay calm, agreeable, easy. So you learn to repress it, to smile instead of shout, to nod instead of say no, to apologize instead of explain. You learn to bury every moment of frustration under layers of, "It's okay," but it wasn't okay. And the body remembers what the mouth denies. The rage beneath the kindness isn't sudden. It builds quietly. It starts as exhaustion, that tightness in your chest, after another conversation where you said yes when you meant no. It shows up as resentment when people keep taking and you keep letting them. You tell yourself you shouldn't feel this way, that you're supposed to be patient, understanding, compassionate. But there's a voice inside that whispers, "I'm tired of being patient. I'm tired of always being the calm one." For years, you've carried everyone's emotions but your own. You've been the steady one, the safe one, the one people unload onto. But what happens to all the weight you carry? It doesn't vanish. It settles in your body, in your chest, in the space between who you are and who you pretend to be. And then one day, something small, a comment, a request, a casual demand breaks the surface, and the anger floods through like a dam cracking open. It terrifies you, because for the first time, you're not kind, you're honest. This is the empath's turning point. The realization that anger isn't the enemy, suppression is. Anger is the body's alarm system, the psyche's way of saying enough. It's the energy of boundaries trying to be born. You've mistaken peacekeeping for peace, but real peace can't exist without truth. And truth, sometimes, sounds like fury. So the shadow begins to rise, not to destroy you, but to protect you. It's the part of you that's tired of pretending, tired of pleasing, tired of shrinking in the name of love. It's the part that knows that kindness without honesty isn't compassion, it's control. You don't need to lash out. You don't need to break things. You just need to stop betraying yourself in the name of being good. When the rage surfaces, listen to it. It's not trying to hurt anyone, it's trying to heal you. Because beneath every empath's calm smile lies a truth waiting to be spoken. Sometimes, the kindest thing you can do is finally stop being nice. There's a strange shift that happens when you give too much for too long. It doesn't start with anger, it starts with emptiness. You wake up one day and realize you don't have anything left to offer, but people are still asking. You look at the same faces you once cared for so deeply and feel nothing, or worse, irritation. Their words drain you. Their problems feel heavy. You still nod, still smile, still listen, but inside something has hardened. It's not because you stopped caring. It's because you cared past the point of repair. This is the moment when compassion starts to curdle. It's not that you want to resent people. You don't. You still understand them. You still see their pain. But now, when they come to you with the same stories, the same self-inflicted wounds, something in you recoils. You realize how much of your life has been spent patching up others while quietly falling apart yourself. You see the cost of your kindness, the years of self-betrayal dressed as love. You thought being good meant being selfless, but all it really meant was being empty. Resentment is what happens when love is given without balance. It's the soul's way of saying, enough. You start to notice it in small moments, a sigh before answering the phone, a quiet bitterness after saying yes again. You used to feel guilty for thinking of yourself, but now you feel guilty for not. You begin to see how much of your compassion was never really compassion. It was fear. Fear of being disliked, fear of being left, fear of being called selfish. And that fear turned every act of kindness into an unspoken transaction. If I take care of you, maybe you'll love me back. But they don't. Not really. Because when you teach people that your love has no limits, they start to believe you don't either. They grow comfortable taking what you offer without ever thinking about what it costs. And by the time you realize the imbalance, it's already too late. Your empathy has turned sour. You try to hide it. You tell yourself you're just tired, just burned out. But the truth is harder to face. You're angry not just at them, but at yourself. Angry for how easily you were convinced that kindness meant self-sacrifice. Angry that you kept giving to people who never looked back to see if you were okay. Angry that your compassion was built on a wound. This is the shadow side of empathy, the part no one talks about. The part where the heart that once overflowed with love now aches with disillusionment. You start to see clearly, and clarity hurts. You see that not everyone deserves your tenderness, that not every pain is yours to heal, that sometimes love means stepping away, not staying close. And as the resentment fades into understanding, you begin to forgive yourself not for being too kind, but for confusing compassion with compliance. You learn that true empathy doesn't mean saving everyone. It means finally saving yourself. There comes a point when the heart just stops. Not physically, but emotionally. The quiet collapse that happens when you've cared too much for too long. You don't plan for it. It doesn't arrive with drama or warning. It just happens. One day, you wake up and feel nothing. No excitement, no warmth, no sadness even. Just a dull stillness where your feelings used to live. The world that once moved you now feels distant, like you're watching it through glass. The people who once lit up your soul now only drain it. The empath's gift, the endless well of compassion, has finally run dry. At first, you panic. You've always been the one who feels deeply, who listens, who cares. So when you stop feeling, you think something's wrong with you. You try to force it back, you smile harder. You listen longer. You pretend to care like you used to. But no matter how much you try, the spark doesn't return. You sit across from someone pouring out their pain, and all you can think about is how heavy your body feels. Their words float past you, muffled, distant. You nod. You murmur something kind. But inside, you're empty. This is burnout on a soul level. It's what happens when your empathy has no boundaries. When you've carried the weight of everyone else's storms for years. The nervous system finally says, enough. The emotions shut down to protect what's left of you. It's not coldness, it's survival. You've spent years absorbing pain, fixing what's broken, showing up no matter how much it hurt. But you forgot that even healers need healing. Even light bearers need rest. So your body does what your mind refuses to. It turns off. You stop reacting, stop giving, stop caring. Not out of cruelty, but because you've reached the edge. You're running on fumes, and there's nothing left to offer. The silence that follows isn't peaceful, it's numb. You stare at the ceiling at night and wonder where your heart went. The tears that used to come so easily are gone. Even anger feels too heavy to hold. But underneath that numbness, something sacred is happening. It's not destruction, it's protection. Your soul is retreating inward, away from the noise, away from the demands, away from the endless giving that never gave anything back. It's building a cocoon, a barrier between you and the world that's taken too much. It's saying, rest, be still, stop carrying what was never yours. The collapse isn't the end of your empathy, it's the beginning of your healing. Because in the quiet, after everything falls apart, you finally see what you've become. Someone who forgot to include themselves in their own compassion. So you stop pretending. You stop forcing connection. You stop saving others. You sit in the emptiness and let yourself be still. It's uncomfortable at first, but slowly, it starts to feel honest. Because for the first time in a long time, you're not performing care. You're conserving it. The collapse isn't your failure. It's your body's way of saying, you've done enough. Now, let yourself be saved. It's strange when the silence finally arrives, after years of being overwhelmed by noise, emotional noise, mental noise, the constant pull of everyone else's feelings. It should feel like relief, but it doesn't. It feels like emptiness. The world that once screamed with emotion now feels muted, hollow, far away. You sit in rooms where you used to feel everything, and now you feel nothing. No joy, no pain, no warmth. Just a stillness so deep it almost hums. This is the dark night of empathy, when the light of feeling goes out, and the soul is left alone in the dark. At first, you fight it. You think you've lost your heart. You wonder if you've become cold, selfish, broken. You search for your old sensitivity like it's something you dropped and can't find. You try to force the emotions back. You listen harder, you reach out to people, you take on their pain again, hoping to feel something, but nothing lands. It's like your soul has gone offline. You can hear the world, but you can't touch it. You can see the suffering, but it doesn't move you. You've gone from drowning in emotion to being stranded on dry land, and you don't know which is worse. This is what happens when the heart that never rests finally collapses into stillness. It's not punishment. It's not failure. It's the psyche's way of resetting after years of overload. When an empath burns out, the nervous system protects itself by going numb. It shuts down feeling because it can't take any more. The mind calls it emptiness, but the soul calls it recovery. The loneliness of this phase is unlike anything else. You pull away from people not because you don't care, but because you can't pretend anymore. Their stories, their chaos, their endless need, you can't hold it like you used to. You sit in the silence and try to find something familiar inside yourself, but all you find is quiet. It feels like you've lost your identity. Who are you when you're not feeling for everyone else? Who are you when your empathy stops answering the call? But underneath the numbness, something is happening. The heart is resting. The spirit is detoxing from emotional noise. You don't realize it yet, but this emptiness is not the absence of life. It's the clearing of space for your own. The darkness isn't a void. It's soil. Everything that died inside you, the overgiving, the exhaustion, the false peace, is decomposing into something fertile. So you stop fighting the stillness. You start letting it hold you. You stop trying to feel and simply breathe. Slowly, the silence begins to shift. It's not cold anymore, it's clean. The numbness starts to feel like peace. And when the first spark of emotion returns soft, subtle, real, you finally understand. The dark night wasn't your end. It was your reset. The pendulum had to swing from everything to nothing before you could learn what true balance feels like. When everything finally goes quiet, you start to hear things you've spent your whole life trying to silence. The thoughts that were too dark, the feelings that were too raw, the instincts that didn't fit the image of who you thought you were. They rise slowly, like shapes emerging from deep water. Anger, jealousy, desire, pride. All the parts of you that you once pushed down in the name of being good. Alone, there's nowhere left to hide from them. And for the first time, you see them not as enemies, but as truth. This is the part no one warns you about, that healing isn't all light and love. Sometimes it's looking straight at the version of yourself you've spent years pretending didn't exist. The selfish one, the resentful one, the one who wants to walk away, the one who's tired of giving. For the empath, this meeting feels like betrayal. You were raised on kindness, trained in compassion. You believed that being good meant being endlessly forgiving, endlessly soft. So when the darker parts of you appear, your first instinct is to reject them, to shove them back into the dark where they came from. But they don't leave. They wait, patiently. They've been with you since the beginning, after all. Every yes that meant no. Every smile that hid exhaustion. Every time you swallowed your truth to keep the peace, the shadow was born there, quietly collecting the pieces of yourself you threw away. It's not evil. It's the part of you that remembers what it's like to have boundaries. It's the part that gets angry when you're mistreated. It's the part that wants you to stop pretending. At first, being alone with it is terrifying. The silence starts to feel crowded, full of feelings you don't want to face. You try to distract yourself, to escape the mirror that solitude holds up. But every time you turn away, it's still there, your own reflection, unfiltered. You realize that what you've called darkness is just honesty without the mask. The anger is truth that's been silenced. The selfishness is self-preservation that's been denied. The shadow is not your enemy. It's your missing half. Carl Jung said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." This is that moment. You start to understand that wholeness doesn't come from perfection, it comes from inclusion. To deny the shadow is to deny yourself. And so, little by little, you stop fighting it. You start asking it questions. What do you need? What are you trying to tell me? And the shadow answers softly. I only wanted you to stop abandoning yourself. When you finally stop running, something incredible happens. The fear fades, the shame dissolves, and in its place comes power, grounded, calm, unshakable. Because now you're no longer just the empath, the giver, the light. You're both. The soft and the strong, the kind and the fierce, the light and the shadow. And for the first time, you don't have to choose. There comes a quiet moment after the storm, when the darkness inside you no longer feels like an enemy. When you stop running, stop resisting, and just sit with it. The part of you you've been avoiding for years is no longer a monster hiding in the corner. It's smaller than you thought, softer even. It looks tired. And then, with a shock, you realize why it looks familiar, because it's you. The version of yourself you left behind when you decided that being good was more important than being whole. You see it clearly now. Every time you apologized for things that weren't your fault, every time you smiled when you wanted to cry, every time you made yourself small to make someone else comfortable, that's where the rejection began. You didn't just hide your anger or sadness. You hid yourself. You learned early that love came with conditions, that being accepted meant being agreeable, polite, kind, forgiving. You learned to earn affection by erasing anything that made others uneasy. The truth is, you didn't become good, you became incomplete. The shadow you feared all this time isn't evil. It's simply the exiled parts of you, the ones that got silenced to keep the peace. The outspoken self, the honest self, the self that said no without guilt, the self that demanded respect instead of begging for love. They're all still here, waiting for you to stop seeing them as flaws, waiting to be brought back into the light. When you finally let them speak, they don't shout or accuse. They just tell the truth. I was only trying to protect you. The anger, the selfishness, the frustration, they were never trying to ruin your goodness. They were trying to remind you that goodness without boundaries isn't kindness. It's surrender. It's strange how much relief comes with this realization. You start to see that the parts you've buried are not dangerous. They're honest. They wanted what every human wants: to be seen, to be loved, to belong without performing. You realize how long you've mistaken obedience for virtue, silence for peace, exhaustion for compassion. You see how you've built your entire identity around being easy to love, even if it meant never being truly known. But the truth is, your light isn't meant to exist without your dark. The two complete each other. The part of you that gives endlessly needs the part that knows when to stop. The part that forgives needs the part that demands accountability. The part that loves needs the part that protects. Integration isn't about choosing who to be. It's about remembering that you've always been both. So you stop apologizing for the fullness of who you are. You stop hiding the parts that don't fit the image of the good person. You begin to reclaim what you abandoned, not to become perfect, but to become real. And as you do, something shifts. The guilt fades, the fear quiets, and in that stillness, you feel it, the return of your own power. The rejected self is no longer waiting in the shadows. It's home. Anger has always scared you. It felt dangerous, ugly, unspiritual. You grew up believing that good people don't get angry. They stay calm, patient, forgiving. So every time that heat rose inside you, you pushed it down. You swallowed your words, smiled through your teeth, told yourself you were being mature. You thought you were doing the right thing. But all that buried fire didn't disappear. It stayed, waiting like coals under ash. And one day, when you finally stop running from yourself, it rises again. But this time, it feels different. It doesn't burn to destroy. It burns to illuminate. That's when you realize anger isn't the opposite of love. It's part of it. It's the part that says, "This hurts." It's the part that draws the line between what's sacred and what's not. For so long, you confused kindness with compliance. You thought love meant endless forgiveness, endless understanding, endless yes. But real love has edges. Real love says no when it needs to. Real love protects what matters. The alchemy of anger is what happens when you stop fearing your own power. When you realize that anger isn't a sign you're cruel. It's a sign that something inside you wants balance. The empath learns this the hard way. After years of people-pleasing, overgiving, absorbing pain that wasn't yours, the anger comes as a revelation. It's not rage, it's clarity. It's the moment you finally understand that love without boundaries isn't love. It's self-abandonment wearing a halo. You start to look back and see how many times your silence was mistaken for consent. How many times you said yes out of fear of losing someone. How often you let others cross your limits because you didn't know where they were. You were never weak, you were kind without protection. And now, as the anger rises, it starts to build shape around you. Not walls, structure. Boundaries are the architecture of self-respect. They don't close your heart. They keep it from leaking. They don't punish others. They teach them how to treat you. You begin to see that saying no doesn't make you less loving. It makes your love cleaner, truer, sustainable. There's a deep relief that comes with this clarity. The energy that once went into pleasing everyone now returns to you. You no longer say yes out of guilt or fear. You choose it, consciously, from a place of strength. You learn to speak your truth even when your voice shakes. You learn to protect your peace even when it disappoints others. And for the first time, you realize that love isn't supposed to cost your self-respect. The fire that once terrified you has become your light. It no longer scorches, it illuminates. It burns away what's false and reveals what's real. You understand now that anger, when met with awareness, isn't destruction, it's transformation. It's the moment when your heart, once soft to the point of breaking, learns how to stay open without being consumed. The empath who feared their own fire finally learns to wield it, not to wound, but to warm. It happens quietly. No dramatic scene, no shouting, no tears, just a single word, soft, steady, and final. No. For most people, it's simple. But for the empath, it's a revolution. The first no isn't about defiance. It's about survival. It's the moment you stop giving from depletion. The moment you stop agreeing to things that make your soul shrink. It's the sound of a door closing to protect something sacred inside you. At first, the word feels heavy in your mouth. You've spent your whole life saying yes to favors, to apologies, to relationships that drain you. Yes has been your armor, your safety. Yes kept the peace, kept you loved, kept everyone else comfortable. So when you finally say no, your body trembles, your mind panics. You wait for rejection, for anger, for someone to call you selfish. But then something unexpected happens. Silence. The world doesn't end. The sky doesn't fall. You breathe, and for the first time, the air feels clean. It's strange, this new kind of freedom. No used to sound harsh in your head, sharp, cold, unkind. But now it feels honest, grounded, warm. You start to realize that boundaries aren't barriers, they're breath. Every no you speak creates space. Space for rest, for truth, for yourself. For years, you thought love meant saying yes to everyone else. But real love includes yourself in the equation. Of course, not everyone likes your new language. The people who benefited from your endless yes will feel it first. They'll question you, guilt you, call you changed. They'll remind you of all the times you were there for them, all the ways you used to bend. And for a moment, the old pull returns the urge to explain, to soften, to take it back. But you don't. You stand there quietly and hold your ground, not out of pride, but out of peace. You've learned that explanation is a trap for empaths. Every word becomes an invitation for negotiation. So instead, you stay still. You say no once and let it be enough. Then comes the exhale, the deep, full breath that feels like it's coming from somewhere ancient inside you. The weight you've carried for years, the pressure to please, to fix, to hold everything together begins to lift. You start to see that every no isn't rejection, it's direction. It's your soul steering you back to yourself. You'll lose some people along the way. The ones who only loved you for your compliance will fade. It will hurt, but it will also make room for something better: relationships built on truth, not transaction. You'll realize that no doesn't close your heart. It cleans it. It clears out everything that isn't real, so that what remains can finally breathe. And as the dust settles, you'll notice something else. You're no longer afraid of disappointing others. You're more afraid of betraying yourself. The first no was the hardest, but the second one comes easier. The third one feels natural. And with each one, the same quiet miracle happens again. The world adjusts, but your soul exhales. There comes a day when you just stop. You don't announce it, you don't explain it, you just stop engaging with the chaos. The endless cycles of fixing, soothing, rescuing, they lose their pull. The conversations that used to keep you up at night now fade into background noise. The people who thrive on drama, who live off the energy of reaction, start to feel like ghosts. For the first time in your life, you don't want to join the storm. You just want quiet. It feels strange at first. For years, you've been the emotional firefighter, rushing into every conflict, putting out every flame, taking responsibility for peace that was never yours to keep. You told yourself it was love, that helping people navigate their messes meant you cared. But deep down, it wasn't love. It was habit. A reflex born from the fear that if you didn't hold everything together, everything would fall apart. You've lived so long inside other people's drama that stillness feels foreign. But something inside you is tired. Tired of spinning in circles. Tired of fixing what doesn't want to heal. Tired of mistaking chaos for connection. So you step back. Not dramatically, not with resentment, just quietly. You start answering slowly, or not at all. You stop trying to explain yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You stop being the emotional glue that holds others together while you fall apart. At first, guilt follows you like a shadow. You feel selfish for not showing up, for not caring as loudly as before. But then, something deeper begins to unfold: peace. Stillness doesn't come easy. It's awkward at first, like learning to breathe differently. But soon, you start to notice how much energy you used to spend reacting to things that didn't deserve a reaction. You start to see that drama is a kind of hunger, a craving for attention, validation, control, and by feeding it, even with good intentions, you are keeping it alive. Now, without your energy, the chaos starts to fade. The people who depended on your emotional labor either adjust or drift away, and you let them. In the quiet that follows, you begin to hear your own voice again, the one that used to be drowned out by everyone else's noise. It's softer, steadier, wiser. You realize that peace doesn't need to be earned. It just needs to be protected. You don't have to fix anyone. You don't have to join the noise to prove you care. You can love people and still refuse to participate in their storms. The world around you might call it detachment, but you know better. It's healing. It's the return of your boundaries, your time, your energy. You finally understand that not every battle needs your empathy. Not every story needs your presence. And the moment you stop feeding chaos, it stops growing. What replaces it isn't emptiness. It's calm. Not the kind of calm that's silent out of fear, but the kind that hums with strength. The kind that says, I no longer need the noise to feel alive. There comes a point when you realize you've been living everywhere except inside yourself. Your mind has been in other people's emotions, your heart tangled in their stories, your energy stretched thin across 1,000 invisible connections. You've been everywhere except here. In your own body, the empath's curse is disembodiment, feeling so much for others that you forget what it feels like to simply be. But after the burnout, after the silence, after the long withdrawal from the noise, something inside begins to call you home. At first, it's subtle. You start to notice your breath again, the weight of your feet on the ground, the rhythm of your heart, slow, steady, familiar. You realize how long it's been since you actually listened to your body, not as a problem to fix, but as a living, breathing part of you. It's strange, grounding yourself after years of floating in other people's emotions. You feel heavier, but not in a bad way, heavier like roots sinking into soil. For the first time in a long time, you're not drifting, you're anchored. When you've spent years tuning into everyone else's pain, returning to your own sensations can feel uncomfortable. Your body holds memories, the tension in your shoulders, the tightness in your chest, the knots in your stomach. They're not random. They're messages. Every ache has a story, every stiffness a truth you once ignored. You begin to understand that your body isn't against you. It's been trying to speak to you all along. When it ached, it was saying, slow down. When it trembled, it was saying, you're not safe here. When it felt heavy, it was saying, you're carrying too much that isn't yours. So you start to listen. You stretch. You rest. You breathe deeply, not to control anything, but to feel where your breath stops short. You notice how certain people make your body tense, how some places feel draining and others peaceful. You begin to realize that your body has always known what your mind tried to rationalize away. It's your compass, one that never lies. Slowly, you start reclaiming the small moments of embodiment, drinking water and actually tasting it, walking without headphones and feeling the rhythm of your steps, breathing without rushing to the next thought. You stop running from your body's signals and start honoring them. You no longer see your sensitivity as a curse, but as a finely tuned instrument that works best when grounded. As you come home to yourself, something shifts in your empathy. It becomes cleaner, clearer, calmer. You can feel others without losing yourself in them. You can care deeply without collapsing under their pain. You realize that the body isn't a cage. It's your anchor, your boundary, your truth. It holds the map back to presence, back to safety, back to you. The return to the body isn't the end of your journey. It's the beginning of living it. Because when you finally belong to yourself again, you don't have to absorb the world to understand it. You just have to breathe and stay. There's a kind of compassion that burns you out, and then there's a kind that brings you peace. The first comes from fear, from needing to be good, to be loved, to be useful. The second comes from truth, from knowing your worth isn't measured by how much you give away. This is what it means to love with your eyes open, to care deeply but clearly, to see people fully, not just through the lens of their pain. After everything you've been through, the exhaustion, the silence, the collapse, empathy begins to feel different now. It's no longer heavy. It's no longer a duty. It's a choice. You start to notice that your heart has changed shape. It's softer, but steadier. You still feel things deeply, but they don't flood you anymore. You can walk into someone else's sadness and not drown in it. You can listen to their pain without feeling responsible for fixing it. You can hold space for someone's storm without letting it sweep you away. This is compassion after awakening empathy. That's no longer blind, but wise. You used to think love meant rescue, that to care was to intervene, to fix, to save. But now you understand that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is step back, to let people meet their own lessons, to trust that pain can be a teacher too. You've learned that trying to protect everyone from their suffering only keeps them and you trapped. Love without boundaries becomes control. Love without clarity becomes confusion. But love with awareness becomes freedom. When your compassion matures, it becomes less about sacrifice and more about presence. You stop offering yourself as a solution and start offering your truth. You stop saying yes out of guilt and start saying yes out of alignment. You don't absorb emotions anymore, you witness them. You don't fix broken things that aren't yours to fix. You simply stand beside them. And in that, something profound happens. People start healing themselves. Because your love no longer enables their avoidance, it reminds them of their own power. The world around you might still try to pull you back into the old ways, the constant giving, the emotional rescuing, the endless empathy without balance. But now, you can see it clearly. You can feel when someone's pain is asking to be witnessed and when it's trying to control. You can tell when your heart is open and when it's leaking, and you protect that difference fiercely. There's beauty in this kind of compassion. It doesn't seek to be noticed. It doesn't need to be thanked. It's quiet, rooted, and real. You still care, but now your care has integrity. It includes you. This is empathy reborn, not the fragile kind that breaks under the weight of the world, but the kind that holds the world gently without losing itself. You love still, but this time with strength, with eyes open, with boundaries shaped by wisdom, not fear. The kind of love that no longer costs you your peace. It restores it. There was a time when you couldn't tell where you ended and other people began. You were a mirror reflecting everyone's moods, fears, and needs back to them. You became what they wanted to see, said what they needed to hear, and shaped yourself around their emotions, like water around stone. You mistook reflection for connection, empathy for identity. But something shifts after you've spent time in silence. After you've seen your own reflection in the dark, the mirror begins to change. It doesn't vanish, it transforms. The surface that once only reflected others starts to open, becoming a window. You no longer mirror what people show you. You begin to see through it. It starts subtly. The things that used to confuse you, the people's moods, their contradictions, the way they say one thing and feel another, stop overwhelming you. Instead of absorbing their emotions, you start observing them. You see the difference between what someone projects and what's really underneath. You start to understand that most people live inside illusions, stories about who they are, what they want, and how the world should see them. You used to get lost in those stories, believing they were true. Now, you can see through them, not with judgment, but with awareness. The world becomes clearer. You begin to notice how much of what people call connection is actually performance. How much of what they call truth is defense. But instead of feeling bitter, you feel free, because you no longer need to participate in the play. You can love people for who they are, beneath their masks, without needing to join their illusions. You no longer lose yourself trying to fix what was never real. Being a window changes everything. You still feel deeply that part of you will never disappear, but now you feel from a place of clarity, not confusion. When someone tries to pull you into their drama, you see the fear behind their words instead of reacting to the noise. When someone tries to project their pain onto you, you recognize it for what it is, a reflection of their own shadow. And instead of absorbing it, you let it pass through you like light through glass. This kind of perception isn't cold, it's compassionate. It doesn't distance you from the world, it lets you finally see it. You understand that empathy without awareness was blindness. You were seeing emotion, but not truth. Now, your vision is wider, deeper, quieter. You no longer need to mirror the world to feel connected to it. You can stand still, transparent, clear, and let people reveal themselves as they are. The freedom in this is profound. You stop reacting. You stop taking things personally. You stop mistaking noise for meaning. You begin to realize that the power of empathy was never in feeling everything it was, in seeing clearly. The mirror once made you disappear. The window lets you see. And through it, the world finally comes into focus, not as something to absorb, but as something to understand. There's a calm that comes after the storm, not the fragile kind that feels like waiting for the next wave, but the deep, grounded stillness that follows true understanding. You've fought your way through emotional chaos, through exhaustion disguised as empathy, through love that demanded too much. Now, something quieter begins to grow inside you. It's not hardness, not distance, it's strength. The kind that doesn't need to prove itself, the kind that just is. You start to move through the world differently. Your steps are slower, your words fewer, but they carry more truth. You don't rush to comfort people the way you used to. You listen, you care, but you no longer sacrifice your peace to save someone from their own lessons. You've learned that compassion without boundaries isn't kindness, it's surrender, and you've surrendered enough. Now, you give only when it's real, only when it flows from fullness instead of guilt. People notice the change. They might call you distant or cold, but they don't understand what it took to get here. The years of overgiving, the burnout, the breakdown, the rebuilding. You're not cold, you're clear. You no longer mistake chaos for connection. You no longer confuse noise for importance. You've traded emotional drama for quiet truth, and for the first time, peace feels like power. This is what quiet strength looks like. It doesn't roar, it doesn't demand, it doesn't fight to be seen. It simply stands. You know who you are now. You know what you need, what you can give, and what you can no longer tolerate. You can sit in silence without feeling empty. You can be alone without feeling lonely. You can care for someone deeply and still walk away when it costs your inner calm. It's strange how light peace feels once you stop carrying what was never yours. You used to think that caring meant carrying, that love meant endurance. But now you know that love can also mean release. You no longer feel guilty for resting, for saying no, for letting go of what drains you. You've discovered that gentleness doesn't mean weakness. It means restraint, awareness, and grace. In the past, your empathy was like an open wound, raw, exposed, always bleeding for others. Now it's become something different. A quiet current, running steady and strong beneath your surface. You still feel deeply, but you don't drown in it anymore. You've learned how to let emotions move through you instead of into you. You don't hold everything. You allow. This peace doesn't make life easier. The world still hurts, people still struggle, but you meet it all with a steadiness that comes from knowing yourself. You no longer react, you respond. You no longer chase, you choose. You no longer bend until you break. And in that stillness, that soft but unshakable clarity, you realize something simple and profound. Compassion was never supposed to be a cage. It was supposed to be freedom. And now, it finally is. There was a time when you believed light and dark were enemies, that the parts of you that hurt, that raged, that doubted, were flaws to be fixed. You thought you had to be all softness, all understanding, all love to be worthy. But after walking through the storms of burnout and silence, through the shadows you once feared, you begin to see it differently. The darkness was never your enemy. It was your missing piece. The parts of you you tried to bury were not evil, they were honest. And when you finally stop running from them, something miraculous happens. The shadow doesn't swallow your light. It steadies it. You used to shine too brightly, giving your warmth to everyone without thought of how much it cost. You glowed until you burned out. Now, your light feels different, quieter, stronger, grounded. It's not the kind that flickers to please or fades under pressure. It doesn't need to prove itself or beg to be seen. It simply exists, steady as a heartbeat, clear as truth. This is what happens when you make peace with your shadow. You stop leaking your energy through guilt and start channeling it through wisdom. The darkness taught you what boundaries never could. That love without self-respect is a slow form of destruction. It showed you that anger has value, that sadness has meaning, that even your fear was trying to keep you safe. You begin to realize that every emotion you once rejected was trying to serve you. They were never here to destroy your goodness. They were here to deepen it. Now, when someone tests your patience, you don't suppress the irritation. You listen to it. When your intuition warns you, you don't silence it with kindness. You trust it. When you need rest, you take it without apology. Your compassion has matured into something powerful, no longer soft to the point of collapse, but firm with love. You can stand your ground without closing your heart. You can forgive without allowing the wound to reopen. You can care deeply without losing yourself in the process. There's a peace that comes with this balance, the kind that doesn't fade when life gets messy. You understand now that light without darkness is incomplete. The shadow gave your empathy roots, weight, and direction. It taught you discernment. It turned your compassion into a choice, not a compulsion. You don't glow for attention anymore. You glow because you've made peace with every part of yourself. The kind, the angry, the tired, the brave. You've integrated it all. And what emerges isn't fragile light, but radiant wholeness. The kind that doesn't flicker under pressure or dim for comfort. This is what real healing looks like. Not endless positivity, but balance. Not constant giving, but alignment. The shadow didn't take your light away. It refined it. It turned it into something you can carry without breaking. And as you stand there, fully yourself, fully human, fully whole, you realize the darkness was never here to destroy your light. It was here to teach it how to last.